The Japanese forced the American soldiers into an air raid shelter. They hauled over large barrels of gasoline to block the entrance, then poured the gasoline inside, and lit it with torches. In an instant, flames roared through the shelter. The trapped Americans screamed in agony as they burned alive. Outside, Japanese troops set up machine guns, gunning down any American who tried to escape. A Japanese officer stood nearby, watching expressionlessly as the Americans were reduced to charred corpses. This was a real massacre of American prisoners of war on the Philippine front. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched its surprise attacks across Southeast Asia. The 10,000 American troops stationed on the Bataan Peninsula were crushed by the Japanese advance. Even five-star General Douglas MacArthur was forced to flee to Australia. Eventually, with ammunition and food exhausted, the Americans had no choice but to surrender, but the Japanese had no capacity to detain so many POWs. To avoid openly violating the Geneva Convention, they forced the prisoners to march 120 kilometers. Anyone who fell behind was executed on the spot. This became known as the infamous Bataan Death March, one of the most horrifying episodes of the Second World War. Those who survived by chance were thrown into prison camps. Every day they endured brutal labor, forced to farm vegetables for the Japanese. They were given neither enough food nor clothing. Those who starved were simply dumped in pits. Those who tried to escape were hung up and whipped to death by Japanese guards. American Colonel Buisan watched all of this, seething with anger, yet completely powerless. But one day, the Japanese suddenly abandoned the camp. The prisoners suspected it was a trap, a ploy to lure them into escaping, so the Japanese would have an excuse to execute them. Not a single prisoner dared to run. Instead, they rushed into the Japanese warehouses, scavenging for food. Just as they were happily eating, a large detachment of Japanese military police drove tanks and armored vehicles straight into the camp. The moment they arrived, they shot dead one prisoner as a warning. They had been ordered to clean up the American POWs. For easier control, the gendarmerie commander approached Colonel Buisan, trying to persuade him to work for the Japanese, but Buisan firmly refused. The commander then produced a tablet of quinine. Knowing Buisan was suffering from malaria, he tried to tempt him with medicine. Even then, Buisan still refused. Furious, the commander delivered a threat. If he did not cooperate, every time a prisoner escaped, 10 more would be executed in reprisal. The very next day, a prisoner was caught attempting escape. The commander ordered all POWs to line up. Then, one by one, he randomly selected men. Those chosen were dragged aside, forced to kneel in a row, and executed on the spot. Every gunshot meant another American had been killed. Colonel Buisan clenched his teeth, burning with rage, yet utterly helpless. Soon, however, the tide of the Pacific War shifted. The Japanese suffered defeat after defeat. Realizing their end was near, they began massacring prisoners of war. Meanwhile, 250,000 American troops, under MacArthur's command, landed on Leyte Island. Before long, American forces received intelligence that 500 surviving prisoners were being held in a Japanese camp. Fearing the captives would be massacred, MacArthur ordered a special operations team to carry out a rescue mission. Under cover of night, the American commando unit stealthily approached the camp, ready to launch a surprise attack on the Japanese.